independence. In fact, all of us do. But most of us, as I said before, have structures that lead to denying them. And once we've touched them, our lives are different. Once we acknowledge we have touched them and not reject them out of hand. We are all literally going out of our minds a lot. And yet, we later treat those experiences, unless they are extremely profound. Like I was talking with Rusty Schweikert, who was one of the astronauts, and he described how as he hung on to the outside of the spacecraft, and there was time when the camera had broken and they just had free time to sit there, to stand there. And there was a moment when he saw the Earth and he was in the universe, and something happened at that moment. It's so powerful. His whole life's been different since then. It's one of the problems they have with the astronaut program. And people that have had near-death experiences, many people have met things which were so inconsistent with their models of reality that they did, as Rilke said, they just kind of crowded them out of the space, into space. Once you have recognized that there are other realities other than the one that you have been familiar with, your life starts to change. I don't care whether you got it from a joint, whether you got it from meditation, whether you got it from sex, whether you got it from trauma, whether you got it from surfing or whatever. Whatever thing you did that took you beyond yourself, you could have got it from religious ecstasy in temple or church. You could have gotten it in 1,000 different ways. Whatever it was, if you acknowledged it as real as what you started from, you are on your way. That is what's known as awakening. From the moment you have awakened, that is, you acknowledge the fact that you are more than you think you are, and that the universe is different than your conceptual structure has it to be. From then on, the rest of your life is all the grist for the mill of awakening. It's all that process that the awakened awareness uses the stuff from then on in order to get free. It's all the journey to freedom from now. And you literally cannot fall off the path. You can think you fell off the path, which many people do. They say, oh, I lost it. I blew it. I used to be so high. Whatever spiritual gains you make from moment to moment are yours if they are real gains. If you just have them like something you're holding on to, you can lose them. But the basic journey is a journey of the awakening. The thing is, you can't go back to sleep once you start to awaken. You can appear. You know how you try to go back to sleep because you woke up before the alarm clock? And then you lie there and you try to go back to sleep. I mean, it's even more horrible than that. Because when you were asleep, you could milk your melodramas for all they were worth. You could trip out on stuff. Will it? Won't it? Can I? Can I? Should I? Shouldn't I? Did he? Didn't he? And afterwards, you just see yourself doing it. There he goes, milking the drama again. And you want to milk it some more. That's the problem. I mean, this is shorthand conversation. Some of you will understand. You really want to milk it. You really want to get lost back into the drama. You want to be back in the romanticism of life. Because the predicament is that something dies in you when something new is born. And what dies in you is a certain old style of taking your ego so seriously. You just can't quite get into it quite with the same verve you used to be able to. So what we are about is a process of transformation that happens, and it is a road that is just like this. It's highs and lows and depressions and elations, and now you got it and now you lost it, and you grab something and then it just turns into more spiritual materialism and it turns into nothing. And you just watch this process, and you see that in the late 60s, a lot of people, in the early 70s, a lot of people got what I call phony holy. They intellectually saw where they wanted to be, and then they imitated it as if they were that. It's like imitating the Buddha, or imitating the Christ, or imitating Mother Teresa, or whatever, or an undermined mom. And the fraudulence of that, because we in the West are used to our intellect, leading with our intellect. So we see where we want to be, and we imitate it, and then pull ourselves into it. The fraudulence of that leads to a reaction. And you found the same people who you saw first in white with big smiles and doing beads and very holy. See them a few years later at the local bar, saying, oh, that was all crap, it was all, I was off my mind, that was a cult, I'm done with that stuff, and now we got to deal with the real things of the world. And they say, I gave it up, but all they're doing is going through another part of the process. See, there's no way out of it once you start. That's the problem. I often feel like saying people don't start. See, it's too late for you already. I'm sorry, but you're here. You already know too much. See? A great story of a little boy that's being chased in Central Park, and I read it in the New Yorker, and the other kid says to him, is chasing him, and the other kid's big, and the little kid starts to climb up the tree. Big guy's climbing up, and the little kid says, I'm making you climb this tree. Big guy says, no, you're not. And he keeps climbing. I'm making you climb the tree. No, you're not. I'm not going to climb the tree. So the big guy gets down, starts to walk away, and the kid says, I'm making you walk away. He yells from the tree. Big guy says, no, you're not. And as the big boy walks out of the park, the little boy yells, and everything you do for the rest of your life, I made you do. And that's the predicament. Once you've started, everything from here on for the rest of your life is part of this journey of awakening. Now, where does it fit in relation to all the other things of your life? Children, for example, jobs, pleasures, pains, death. See, is it also is it another one of them? Well, I'll do death on Tuesday, and then I'll work on awakening on Wednesday, or I do awakening Sunday morning. That's when we worry about awakening. Unfortunately, it takes it over. One by one, all of those things come under this until finally you are working to awaken. You say, well, what about service to other people? Well, look at how that works. If I want to help you out of your suffering, say you're hungry, the way I feed you will determine whether the suffering of your belly is alleviated, or whether I also simultaneously relieve the root suffering of your separateness. Any act between two human beings can be an act which draws the people closer together into unity, or it's divisive. It's the same way as I said about this lecture. If I'm identifying as being the lecturer, you must be the audience. If I'm standing outside of the lecturing and lecturing, you can stand outside of the audience, and we are meeting here, and we're dancing this way. And the action brings us closer together. Now, since I know that, and I want to, when I feed somebody, I not only want to feed their belly, I want to feed their spirit. I realize that in order to relieve the suffering of other people, I have to work on myself in order that I am not trapped in my own stuff. So that I end up working on myself as an act of compassion for other people. And then you say, well, can you sit around working on yourself when other people suffer? It's not an either-or proposition. Because as you and I quiet down to hear what we're doing here on earth, what's the meaning of our incarnation, and we listen to the forms through which we must express, through through which we must work, what's been handed to us, what's on our plate. Then we act. And if somebody walks up and they're hungry, that's what's on our plate at that moment. If you have a child that's crying, that's on your plate at that moment. To say, like some woman came up to me once and she said, you know, if it wasn't for the kids, I could really do some heavy spiritual work. Can you hear what she's caught in? The kids are her spiritual work. She just hasn't figured out how to use it as her vehicle. The game is you take what's on your plate and you use it through which to become free. So if somebody is starving, in the process of feeding them, that is the vehicle you use to work on yourself, to extricate yourself from being identified with being the feeder. Is that too complex, though? Can you hear that? See, what I saw was that there was no way not to be an actor as long as you're in an incarnation. You can't not do anything. Which thing are you not going to do first? You know, I'm just going to sit in bed. Well, that's doing something. You can't not do anything as long as you're in a form. Forms do things. And then the question is, which form will you do? Which action will you do? Now, when you fully understand that your incarnation is a vehicle for liberation, and that's what your business is on earth, as pure and simple as that, and as uncompromising as that, then the answer to which one should I do comes out of a place where it doesn't matter. Because it doesn't matter out of any other reason. It doesn't matter so much that you can be quiet to listen. The statement is, truth waits. This is from the Tao Te Ching. Truth waits for eyes unclouded by longing. That it is only when there is quietness inside you that you can listen to hear what part you play, what your unique role is in the game. And no role is better than any other role. Whatever you're doing in your life is no better or worse than what I'm doing in my life. It's just different. And each of us has a unique route through. And the art isn't to imitate somebody else's route, but to listen to hear our own route. Because it is in your fulfilling your form perfectly that you're free. When you push away part of yourself or grab something, you're not free. You're trapped by it. You're trapped by your own grabbing. It's like the monkey that sticks his hand in the jar to get the apple and closes his fist, and then with his fist around the apple, he can't get his hand out of the jar. And he doesn't know what to do because he can't let go of the apple. And it's the way they trap monkeys. Because they tie the jar to a string. And then he sticks his hand in it. He's not smart enough to let go of the apple to get his hand in, the banana. No way we can fall off the path. You can scare yourself. Ooh, I've fallen off the path. But that's just more stuff. And I listen from morning till night to people caught in stuff. And my job is to help them see through the stuff. And help them find the place behind the stuff so they can be quiet to hear how to play it out. How to honor it properly. How to appreciate it. These are words that are very important. Words like appreciate. Look at the difference between judge and appreciate. Judging is an intellectual function. Judging is something where you've got to decide between this and that, and you're constantly judging. Isn't it interesting? You go out into the woods and you look at trees, and you appreciate trees. Little gnarled trees and big tall trees and oaks and pine and elms. Each one has its own distinctive beauty, and little gnarled trees have their own beauty. Everything's quite beautiful. Then you look at humans. You notice what happens to appreciation? It turns into judgment. As if, is short better than tall? Is fat better than thin? Is all those dimensions, suddenly it's all judgment. And it's interesting to flip judging back into appreciation again. Like in our interaction with fellow human beings, we are constantly judging. But when you look at yourself, look at how you have unfolded. It wasn't necessarily all intentional, it's just been an unfolding process. You are what you are. You are an essence statement. If your name is David, you are an essence David at this moment. If you're Doris, you're an essence Doris. You are an essence person in the sense that it is uniquely unfolding quite beautifully. If you set aside judgment and just look at appreciation. Now look at another person. They are unfolding the way they are. Your judgment about them is cutting you off from them. But the appreciation, like somebody, you have a hard time with somebody, they're a real stinker. An essence rat. Now, if you appreciate essence ratness, I mean, they have to live inside of it. So you begin to see that people aren't really doing it to each other so much. You are using other people to do it to yourself. Other people are just being who they are. There's the rat, there's the seeker, there's somebody wants something, there's somebody giving something, there's somebody powerful, there's somebody, and you use them mercilessly to play out your own model of yourself. And part of this process of awakening is to watch how you do this and start to accept the responsibility for the way in which you use the universe to keep doing it to yourself over and over and over. And for that, you have to be very quiet to hear how you work. And part of what meditation is about is the technique to quiet you down so that you can begin to watch your own mind at work. And you can watch the way in which you create the stuff of the solidity of the reality. Two people meet and they get involved and they fall in love and they get married, and then later they say, I didn't know about him. Well, why didn't you? It didn't have to be concept. The vibration was all there. All of the information. Everybody is a redundant mass of information. If you're quiet enough to hear, you would hear it all. You would know everything intuitively, not conceptually. You wouldn't know you know, but you would know. And if you were trusting the knowing, not the knowing you know, if you didn't need to know you knew, but you just needed to know, you would be able to act in a way that would keep you from being surprised all the time. Is that too much? Or still too much? Didn't get it? So we think about everything to know whether we know it or not. And if we know each other through our minds, and through our needs, and through our personality, through our ego structures, we are always separate from each other. We are always like objects to each other. And the heart is never fed. There is a way. Let me talk about the heart. I'm not talking about the boom, 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 boom. I'm not talking about the anatomical heart. I'm not talking about the romantic heart. above me. I'm talking about what in Chinese is called the sin, or it's called the Atma or the Jivatma in Sanskrit. It is called also the intuitive heart. It is the place in you. When I took those drugs and went behind all the places I thought I was, and I found a place where I am, that's the doorway to that place. In that place, there is a word that I use at the beginning, namaste. Namaste is a very common word used in India. It means I honor the place in you where when you're in yours and I'm in mine, there's only one of us. Because when you go deep enough into you and get behind all your personality and all your stuff, all your separateness, and I go back it far enough inside me, it ends up there's only one of it. You can call it awareness, you can call it any number of things. You can call it energy, lots of words. Part of what we're talking about is how to acknowledge that place in yourself, and then the next part of it is how do you feed it? It's the care and feeding of the intuitive heart. I mean, you must see, when you walk down the street and you see somebody that is panhandling or sleeping in a doorway, the way in which you close your heart to deal with that situation most often leaves you tight. It leaves you closed down. It leaves you cut off. It leaves you alienated from the universe around you. And there's an anger in you that situation demanded that you do that. And you feel safe when you're in your home and you close the door and you feel safe to open your heart. Isn't that interesting? See, the root of that question is, how do we deal with suffering? How do you deal with suffering? Well, how do you deal with your own suffering? You see that you don't have any trouble dealing with happiness, with pleasure. It's just different than happiness. But pain and suffering, what you try to do is push them away. But you get to the place where you understand that you want to be liberated more than you want to just avoid suffering. And liberation means that you start to use your suffering in order to awaken. And that is a big leap. That is a very big leap. Because Gurdjieff says, Gurdjieff is a Russian philosopher, another thing that people must sacrifice is their suffering. Interesting word. No one who has not sacrificed his suffering can do this work. Nothing can be attained without suffering, but at the same time, one must begin by sacrificing suffering. What does it mean to sacrifice suffering? It means to stop identifying with it, stop milking it. I don't ask for suffering, but when it comes down the path and I've got it, I work with it. At the extreme end is the monk who says, God, God, give me more pain. It's the hair shirt. It's the one that suffering is seen as grace. My guru used to say, do you like suffering or do you like joy? People would say, oh, I took joy. He'd say, I love suffering. It brings me so close to God. Because when you see what suffering is, it's loss of control. Suffering is forcing you to confront a place in your mind where you're clinging. Like you have a state of non-pain and then there's pain, and suddenly you are clinging to the memory of non-pain, so the pain is painful. All it is a strong stigma. There are great saints who were dying of incredible cancer and ulcers and so on, and they had nothing to take away the pain. And does it hurt? Yeah. Well, do you want it to stop? No. It doesn't matter. It's just strong stimulation. There are ways of taking suffering and flipping, and you work with it. Now, you don't lay that on another person. The example I usually use is somebody comes to me and they say, I want to study yoga with you. And I used to teach yoga. Okay, I say, well, why don't you fast to purify? Fine, fast for 7 days. Fast for 9 days. Well, I hadn't thought of starting that rigorous. No, fast for 9 days, just drink warm water. I mean, you tell people anything, it's okay. Person comes in after 7 days, I haven't eaten in 7 days. And you give them a little ego boost. Good, you're doing fine. 2 more days, you'll be enlightened. Then you walk out on the street. Somebody walks up to you and says, hey man, you got a quarter. I haven't eaten in 7 days. Good, you're doing fine. 2 more days and you'll be enlightened. Okay? Can you see how inappropriate that is? In the first case, the person is saying, let me use this as a vehicle for me to get more conscious. In the second place, the person is saying, let me get rid of it. And your job isn't to make a moral judgment about it. Your job is to help people get free of suffering. And you'll find yourself in the paradoxical situation that there'll be a suffering that you're using to get free through, and somebody else is asking you to get rid of that suffering, and you're helping them to get rid of it. Isn't that interesting? It happens to me all the time. Somebody comes up and says, my marriage is falling apart. I feel like saying, aren't you lucky? What incredible grace. You can work with this so well. A beloved just died. Wow. I've got AIDS. Oh. A guy came up to me the other day and he said he had AIDS. And he was a doctor in Los Angeles. He had just increased his practice twice fold. Brought in assistants. He had a new house. He had just given a down payment on. He had 2 sports cars. He was making it in LA. And he found out that he started to have AIDS symptoms. He wasn't positive he had AIDS symptoms. And he came in and he was in terror. It was an actual terror. Now, what's happening inside me? There's 2 levels of this. One is that my human heart is being ripped apart by his pain and his terror. Because I can empathize with his predicament. He has a whole model of his life going this way, and suddenly, boom, it's all different. And there's fear and confusion and everything. So my human heart is crying. There's the other part of me that is just quietly sitting inside that says, so. New curriculum, advanced course. Incredible chance to awaken now. Now, I start to be with him. The first thing he feels is that my human heart is there. He feels like there's a fellow being hurting. And as I said before, the more you're rooted in the emptiness, the more your human heart is available. Because when you're not rooted in that spiritual depth, that rock-like place, you are afraid of your human emotions for fear they'll sweep you away all the time. It's only when you've got this other balance that you can let yourself in that deeply to those emotions. Because most people